I want to say thanks for everybody checking out the brand new merch. We have some awesome merch, like the Smiley Ember. It's amber, but embers. It's a fire. It's smiling fire. And why a fire? Well, fire is something that spreads. And what else can spread? Kindness. Well, STDs, but so can kindness. But so can cynicism and negativity. But as you know, if you've been with me for a long time, and I'm grateful that you're here because you could be anywhere. This is The Mortals. This is episode 227. It's a show which pulls back the curtain, takes on walls brick by brick, and exposes the hearts of those care for those you love most. We're talking about the merch. We're talking about you rocking it and supporting it, and I'm grateful for that. You could check it out right now at the official NathanMorrisMusic.com store, and that is also where you will find The Mortals, the exclusive community, first looks, first listens, behind the scenes content, exclusive content you won't find anywhere else. And I harp on community. I harp on the fact that we are put here to love and be loved, and we are looking for our people always. And if you are longing for being included or tired of negativity or looking to support me and appreciate what it is that I do, whether it's something that I say or it's what I stand behind and for, or the music I create or the podcast or whatever content, that's where you can support me. You are like coal. You keep the lights on. You really do. And there are different levels of membership from the apprentice all the way to the curator. And I want to, at this point in time, give a quick old shout out to our legacy members, our Justin and Christy, and want to say thank you for your upgrade, Diana. Once again, shouted you out during the live on TikTok at Nathan Morris Music. If you don't follow me there, I'm linking all of the socials in the description here. But the community matters, and I have a new single coming out. It's called Waves. It is something I'm very proud of, and you're seeing it everywhere on all the socials, me promoting it and the story behind it. There's this deep story, but then there's also this realization of within the story of what if something that you've held on way too tight to, and you just tried to fit the square peg in the round hole, and you're done. You're done, whether it's you're forced, your hand's forced, or maybe you've realized that it's not healthy. Because if you white knuckle things, you control freaks, it's going to bite you in the ass every time. But if you learn to go with it, go with the waves, stop fighting them, it's beautiful what can happen, because there is victory in suffering. There is victory in this waiting game. And that is what the song's about. And that song will be played for the Mortals first. They're going to hear about it all first and foremost. Also, tours that I'm working on. Mortals, by the way, who are listening, got some big announcements there. Hopefully I can announce it soon. The tour that was going to be happening in February got rescheduled to September. And then we had, you have kids and you have other opportunities that come along. And this has all been blessings in disguise. And it's like, what? And this has been a season for me of letting this white knuckling part of me go. And I want to say thank you for joining the Mortals. It is a community of people who are like-minded. There's a Mortals only Discord. There's all kinds of really cool stuff. And I would really encourage you, I would love for you to check it out. I really would. It would mean a lot to me. And, you can slide into my DMs, I'll slide into yours. And that's where you will find me. All the apps and all the platforms and all the switches can turn off, but there it'll still be. That is the Mortals. This is episode 227 of the Mortals. And I'm going to take a sip of tea and then we're going to spill some. Hopefully not literally. I want to talk about stories that kind of tend to stay with us and linger today. They may come from the funeral profession or the unexplained or moments of humanity that remind us what really matters. I want you to, as I silencio my phone, I'm working on editing an ad. If you're watching this and Nathan Morris Music on YouTube, I'd love for you to subscribe and click the bell, and that tells the platform that you really, really like me. I am doing an advertisement for bidets. I've been doing a ton of these UGC is user-generated content, and a lot of your content that you watch, and you'll notice there are people's faces that pop up and they're promoting a product, and who the hell's this guy or gal? And that may be the case when people see me, but they're promoting this product naturally, authentically, and these brands that used to spend tens of millions of dollars on an actor or actress, not anymore. Back in the day, you may not even know a time where you've held actors and actresses up on pedestals, but they were the bee's knees. They were the things. And Hollywood is a joke now. It's a joke because Hollywood represents so much gross negativity, horrible stuff. There are great people there, I'm sure. And I know of people that have lived there that I love that are great people. But it represents corruption and horrible things and everyone trying to level up at whatever cost. And we no longer look to the actors, actresses as these people that we hold in such high regard and such high esteem. Now it's UGC creators, like, micro creators. There's, is it mini, macro, micro? I don't know. It's weird. It's weird. So putting yourself as influencer creator on things, it seems, has dwindled as far as the discomfort. But I'm doing a bidet. That's fine. Everybody needs a clean butt too. We're the only people in the United States of America. Amanda, in the UK, do you all use bidets? Maybe you use toilet paper too, but I thought that Americans are the only people who are just wiping their butt with this nastily thin paper that is just really gross. Anyway, back to the chlorophyll. You ever have experienced an act of kindness that was really unexpected and pure and that you think about years later? That's what I want to talk about today. The kind of hospitality that isn't just service, that you show up to work and it's something that's required of you. Or yes, you've made the decision to work there, but it's required for you. It's part of your job. But this is something that isn't a part of your pay. It's just this act, and that changes a life. And again, inside the Mortals, I love the thought of going deeper in these conversations, and that's where the most authentic version of me exists. You get an authentic piece of me here, but I would love it if you checked it out. And if you're in the funeral profession too, Director OS, it's if you want to level up the way in which you provide care, and authentically and progressively and confidently. It's serving people in a way that truly matters. It took 18 months and 13 years in the profession to build. And if that's something you're ready for, the link is in the description as well. I want to talk a lot about a lot of things, but we're going to talk about some kindness that went viral, baby. Do you ever watch Tanks? Is it Tanks Good News? Yeah, it's Tanks Good News. He's on, when you go and fuel up at the pumps, like a Thornton's. He's on GSTV, which is gas station TV. Pretty awesome. But it is really cool because he always has positive stories. There was a kid recently, this isn't on my topic, but there's a kid recently who saved someone from a burning building and performed the Heimlich maneuver to save someone's life all in the same day. That kid is awesome. It's great to hear those stories. Let's talk about the anonymous angel who paid for 200 strangers' meals. There's a diner in California, interesting, was shocked when this man quietly paid for every single person's meal before slipping away totally unnoticed. The only clue was a note left on the receipt that said to pass it on. I enjoy doing that. I've been in places where I've been unable to. I've been in places where I am able to. And I really enjoy being able to pay for lunches or dinners of people totally quietly. I did it once for a competitor at the time. And I'm telling this story because it was not my idea originally. It was my idea to act on this, yes. But years before, it was 2012, my friend Tyler in Ohio, his father has very successful funeral homes, and a lot of funeral homes at that time were getting bought out by SCI, I believe. And this is all this man's known, is building this company to something that it became. And every time he would see a competitor out, he would buy their meal. And he did it with an intentional heart. He loved this thought and idea of showing kindness, because the funeral profession, I've talked about it before, it's Jesus Lord. They would drop everything at a moment's notice to care for a total and complete stranger and part heaven and earth. But God forbid, the moment that one of their own, oh, this chair's messed up, one of their own needed them, it's like, how dare you? They're bullies. But I got the idea, and we were out to dinner. I saw one of our biggest competitors, and this competitor had been known to call me like a pain in their ass, and because I was aggressive and getting families to trust us, not making them, but I would make myself known to be like, hey, you have options. Hey, allow us the opportunity. Let me review your pre-arrangement, even if you don't choose us. Let me make sure that it's all to your comfort. And that funeral home owner and director didn't like me. I wouldn't have liked me. I wouldn't have paid for their meal. They were upset. And you don't do it with the intention of getting a pat on the back. I didn't make it known that we bought it, but it was apparently made known ultimately, because the server had ultimately told them. And I don't know if it was a pride thing or if it was embarrassment or what. I think people who have not necessarily been the nicest, and again, that wasn't the intention for me, wasn't just to be like, hey, I'm going to be nice to you even though you're an asshole to me. Even though, yes, I think that's important to be kind to people even when they don't deserve it, because the best way to disarm someone is to be kind to them. What do you say? Oh, I'm so mad at them. I hate them. They suck. They're so nice. Yeah, I did it because it was the good thing and the right thing to do. And I hope, now that I think about it, it took a little bit, but I wonder if that was the act that softened them. Do you pay for people's meals? Do you ever do anything like that? If whatever listening device you're listening on, I would be honored for you to leave a positive review. Positive reviews on any podcast platform really, really help me. And while you're listening, I would love it if you gave us a 5-star, maybe review, thumbs up, whatever the hell you do. Okay, next act of kindness, a funeral home's unforgettable gesture. A grieving family couldn't afford a service for their loved one, but this small town funeral home secretly covered everything: casket, flowers, ceremony, without asking for a single dime. You see a lot of times when people are grieving and experiencing death and loss, it's something that I want to call in the most beautiful way out and respectful way. Most people, like the statistic in the United States is staggering. Over 80% of Americans have less than $1,000 in their checking accounts. And 100% will die. Life insurance, having something set aside is paramount. You don't have to have $1 trillion to take care of your life. Not only that, but take care of those who will survive you in death. And I'm not crucifying or faulting anyone, but be mindful of that. That's the whole reason, too, that I show up and share stories of the funeral profession and my service and pull back that curtain, and then how it's inspired the music. It's all intertwined. We've been so scared of death. I don't want to talk about it because I will die. Yeah, you are. Yes, you will. I was very thoughtful of the funeral home. And perhaps it was a very traumatic, obviously, I would assume it was a very traumatic event that happened. And a lot of times, unfortunately, that's what does happen. And you have maybe medical expenses that pile up. But it is amazing what happens as far as the community total strangers showing up during times of grief. And to that, I commend them. Have you all ever given to like a GoFundMe anonymously that you just feel drawn to? It's interesting because I really like to follow my gut, because people call it gut. And whether you have prayer in your life or you turn to a religion or a relationship with a God, your God, or I meet you here. And I do, as a prayerful person who practices Christianity as a Christian. We call it the gut. I like to call it the Spirit, like the Holy Spirit that lives within inside me. So I stumbled upon this GoFundMe recently, and I felt so inclined, like the immediate knee jerk, because I have this desire. I want to always do for people. But the immediate knee jerk was like, I'm going to give. So I went to it and I sat with that feeling for a minute, and I read the description, and then immediately was like, don't give. This isn't to be heard as me being judgmental. I'm not judging that person or that description or not thinking it was legitimate or whatever, that you may immediately, our minds want to go to something negative to try to figure it out. But I was really proud because then I started to good and evil, right on either shoulder. Don't do it. Do it. You should. Why are you being a dick? I didn't do it because my gut was like, don't do it. Do you ever do that where you're like crucifying yourself because you immediately want to do something and then you're like, no, I shouldn't. You have that deep feeling of I shouldn't do this. And then you start to argue with yourself. It's weird. I don't know. I don't know why I went on to that, but nonetheless, do you ever do that? Have you done that? Do you give to anonymous things or things anonymously? Ooh, the man who left $3 million for waitresses. Here's a retired man who left a hidden fortune, not for his family, but as a tip fund for waitresses across the country. He wanted to thank them for their kindness that they showed him when he had absolutely nothing. It's across every thing when we are heavy-hearted or down on our luck, or I don't know if that necessarily applies, but when we're not at our best, we're not paid attention to. In this instance, they are, but the moment that, or ridiculed, right? And then the moment that we are paid attention to, or large amounts of money or something shows notoriety or nobility, whatever the hell. Maybe I'm not articulating this, but it's like the moment that things start popping off is the moment people are like, oh, you're great, you're great, you're great. No, I remember the kindness, or people who remember kind people, goodness shown to them, even when you weren't popping off, or even when you were trying to build, or even when you were down on your luck. And maybe, just maybe, that's what obviously he's saying. Pretty interesting. Here are some 3 rando facts that I want to talk about, brought to you by me. I don't know why I thought that was funny. Let's talk about the first rando. The random fact of today, number 1, the hotel that never turns away a stranger. Kindness. There is a hotel in Japan that has been free for travelers who cannot afford to pay since the 1700s. No one has ever been turned away. Ever. That's really special. Because I would assume that this hotel, since the 1700s, has probably welcomed a ton of people at no cost. However, I would believe that they wouldn't have to implement that policy as often as you would think they would. Because I don't think there are many people who are really in need. There's not many of them that have their hands out asking for handouts, right? I think people like panhandlers. Do you know panhandlers are people on the side of the road? Like all those undercover videos are hilarious to watch. You should check those out on YouTube, by the way. And if you're on YouTube, be sure to subscribe to me, Nathan Morris Music. I appreciate it. Thank you. These undercover cameras, and they've done so many stories where they follow these people who'd been standing on the corner as you get off or on an interstate, for instance. And they're walking blocks, and then they end up at this McDonald's parking lot in the back corner getting into a brand new Toyota Prius. It's insane. They can make so much money, but people who are really in need are going to be less likely to ask for help. But the gesture is absolutely beautiful. And I just would wonder how many people they have cared for, intended to. It's a beautiful thought. It really is. I think people are genuinely good. And this is a beautiful thing, this offering. Number 2, rando fact. The soldier's bill that was paid 60 years later. A World War II soldier was promised, a World War II soldier once promised to pay back a bar owner for a drink, but never returned. In 2023, his great-grandson, the soldiers, found the old receipt and tracked down the bar, settling the debt 6 decades later. Wow. There's something that is very beautiful about that, because you were supposed to give with the intention of never getting it back, giving money or time. You give out of the goodness and kindness of your heart. My late grandfather told me, Nathan, if you give, expect nothing, because you won't be let down. If you give debt, if you offer funds to a friend and you expect repayment as a debt, like, be mindful of that. It does add this level of, I would think, pressure to the relationship. But it adds pressure, I think, to you too. And so I encourage you there, but also pretty amazing that the great-grandson was obviously told that story by an elderly man, his great-grandfather, who became probably too ill to travel or not technologically savvy enough to figure that out to send mail. And it was a very kind and beautiful gesture that this man probably carried with him as far as the weight of knowing that he had that debt. I don't know about you, but like having a debt, the thought of, or a late, we've all been in a place maybe where whether it was an accident or a bill was unpaid or delayed, where we overlooked it, or maybe we literally couldn't pay it because of our life circumstance at the time. And that feeling, regardless of anything that was set up respectfully to say, hey, we're going to take care of this. But that feeling, that weight, ugh, I've been there a few times in my life. I remember when I had what is it called? A Ford Focus, like a hatchback Ford Focus. I thought it was so cool. I was so cool. And I was like 19. And I couldn't pay it was a tiny payment. Tiny. And I was doing it to build credit. Couldn't pay it. So I called Ford Motor Company up and I was like, oh, I can't pay this. I'm so What do I do? It's amazing what happens whenever you talk to a human and you're a human and you share your story. Honestly, it's like they worked with me, but I know that feeling. There is a cemetery, for random fact, number 3, that leaves fresh flowers on every grave. A cemetery in Italy has volunteers that make sure every single grave has flowers, even for those who have no one left to visit them. I love this because I talk about it all the time. Going to cemeteries is like this beautiful place that you can find solace and quiet. And I encourage you to go find a cemetery and just walk the grounds. Even if it's the driveways, they probably have hills and they'll work your ass, which is good, right? You can work your booty, but leave your phone in your vehicle. Well, actually don't, because that's probably could be dangerous, but put it on airplane mode and make sure it's maybe in a pocket that you don't feel it, so you're not inclined to grab it like we do. But I go to reflect and I actually read names of monuments, and that's where I was when it inspired the initial inspiration for Waves, which releases March 28th. Please pre-save it. I will link it right now. And do you realize how much I am grateful for you doing that? Just that simple free act, because you already have the streaming service, because it's releasing on all of them. There's a link, you click it, but that cemetery that I went to that started this inspiration, or that started this thought journey, it was what became Waves, but it was a cemetery. And to know that there are other people, even, not to say I'm as good as these that are leaving fresh flowers, because that's such a beautiful gesture, but that are so thoughtful, that are so mindful of, this is a holy and hallowed place, that we're going to honor those that have gone before us with flowers to mark that they existed and that they are loved. I think it's awesome. I think it is awesome. Oh, don't get flowers. Flowers die. Blah. Look at the world with a glass half full mentality. You don't have to love flowers. You don't have to say, give me flowers on Valentine's Day. Blah. I get it. I'm just saying, why we got to find all the negative stuff? Flowers die. Like, that's where people would go with that. Flowers are dead. Flowers are going to die. Those are your 3 random facts brought to you by me. Actually, I'm grateful for being able to bring this podcast. I was out for a few weeks. My voice was just not totally there. And the beauty of AI, right? It's amazing. Being able to have created so much content that I feed or have fed this platform, which is Descript. And this podcast just is created through Descript. And if you are in the business of any kind, whether it's a service, a product, you are the business, you should have a podcast, because people are looking for what you offer. And you can't use the excuse, I don't know what I'm doing. That's what Descript's for. And they have you can create an AI clone of your voice. So I've been able to create content with my AI voice that you all probably haven't even known was there. You have eye contact. There are all the kinds of features. I'm going to link it for you to check out. It would be awesome if you did, because even if you create social media content, you could turn long form into short form clips. It's really cool. And you have the ability to have studio sound without all the cool stuff. But nonetheless, I'm glad to be back. We took a week, well, I guess it was a week off for the pod. 227 episodes. That's insane. Insane in the membrane. If you know anybody that is a dermatologist, let me know. I asked that during a live recently. I don't know what's going on. I think I've got had a reaction. I was using different laundry detergent, and my neck, my back, my neck, it broke out. I need a young priest and an old priest. Okay. Whew. Catching my breath. I've been kind of, I wonder why. Like I don't lose my breath, but I feel like I don't breathe. I feel short of breath, or my breath is heavy. I don't know. Maybe, what if here lies Nathan. He died. Let's talk about the blizzard that changed everything. This is our main story today for the podcast, and that is something I want to talk about because the white stuff, the snow, is going away. Well, slowly, I think. It is daylight savings time now. Did you all spring forward already? You don't do that apparently in Mexico. So if you're in Mexico, you're like, shut up. Okay. There are certain moments in life that you never forget. And I talked about this, at the beginning. Not because they were big, not because they were life-changing in the obvious sense, but because something about them, they stuck, a moment of kindness, of warmth, of something maybe about the event itself. This is going to be one of those stories. Jack, Sarah, and their 2 kids, Ethan and Maddie, they were on this cross-country road trip. And this is the kind of trip that young families take and dream about. National parks, roadside diners, stopping wherever the road took them, the family did this. It was a perfect trip for them until it wasn't. Somewhere in the Midwest, in the middle of nowhere, they found themselves caught in a storm. And it was not just any storm, it was this full-on blizzard. And it was the kind that shuts down highways, buries cars, and even the most prepared travelers. If you live where I do, you have, and I think probably up in Pennsylvania and Michigan, they have insanely great road crews. But where I live, it's ridiculous. They're prepared. So if you have cars being covered and they're not able to keep up with it, that's not good, Mike. That's not good. So somewhere in the Midwest, middle of nowhere, they were caught in this storm, this blizzard. It took a lot of people by surprise just how overwhelmed, overtook they were. So the snow slammed against the windshield, the wipers barely keeping up. They're driving or trying to in this weather like dodos. The road was disappearing, and the GPS, of course, because of where they were, wasn't showing them where they were needing to go. It just was rerouting, and what is it like where it just doesn't, no signal, obviously. The dad grips the steering wheel so tightly that his knuckles were white because he's white knuckling. And the wife, Sarah, was doing everything that she could to keep the kids calm in the back seat because they're getting nervous. They were not just lost at this point, they were stranded. And finally, after what felt like forever, they spot this sign and it says Maplewood Inn, 2 miles ahead. Now, they had to barely see it through the snow that was coming down, but relief flooded them. It was a place to stop, to warm up, to get out of the storm. But when they pull into it, their headlights were illuminating the front of this small, picturesque bed and breakfast. Their hearts sank. A handwritten sign on the front door. This is just the kind of luck that I feel like, I feel like anybody would have this in this kind of situation. It says closed for renovations. Jack sits back in the driver's seat, staring at the sign while this storm is just barreling down on them. And he turns to his wife and he says, "What do we do?" "Come on, husband. Men are supposed to be protectors, and that's where we immediately go, and how dare they?" But you know what? Men are human. Before she could answer, this front door opens to this bed and breakfast. And standing there, wrapped in a thick cardigan, was this elderly woman, her silver hair pinned back in this loose bun. She squinted into the storm through the snow and saw this family with little children in the car, and without hesitation waves them inside. Come in, she says, motions towards the door. "You're going to freeze out here." Now, Jack and Sarah were hesitant. They weren't sure if they should, but they absolutely have no choice at this time. The kids were freezing cold. They all grab their bags and they hurry inside. The warmth of the inn instantly melts this icy grip of the storm that kind of nestled into their bones. You know, that bone-chilling cold? The woman introduces herself as Margaret, the owner of the inn. She was in her late 70s. She has soft eyes and this voice that made you feel very safe. She told them the inn had been closed for months, undergoing repairs, and she wasn't expecting anyone. "But you're not visitors," she said with a smile. "You're guests, and guests should be treated like family." Margaret is the woman, leads them to this cozy sitting room where a fireplace crackles softly. Within minutes, she had blankets wrapped around the little kids, a kettle on the stove, and something warm cooking in the kitchen. Jack and Sarah, husband and wife, exchanged looks, overwhelmed by this generosity of a complete stranger. Now that night, instead of being stranded in a freezing car on the side of the road, They sat around a dining room table that had been empty for months, eating the best homemade stew that they'd ever had. Margaret told them stories about the inn, about the people who had passed through its doors over the years, about the way she and her late husband had built this place with their own hands. She talked about kindness, about how you never really know when this small act of hospitality that you may offer might change someone's life. People don't always remember places, she said. She's saying this to Sarah, but they do remember how a place made them feel. And that is the experience that I always talk about, by the way. And that night, as they settled into their rooms that hadn't been slept in for months, the storm was still raging outside. And the family realized something, that they too would never forget this place. 2 years later, the family found themselves in the area again. It wasn't planned. It was one of those moments where the road takes you somewhere familiar, but you aren't necessarily sure. And then suddenly you feel like you need to go back. The kids were now a little older, still talked about that night that they had spent at Maplewood Inn. So Jack makes a decision. They're going to go back. And this time, not as stranded travelers, but this time as guests. And when they pulled into the driveway, something was different. The sign was gone. In its place was a new one. Margaret's Place. Open year-round. Now, they walk in and they're excited because they expect to see her behind the front desk. But instead, they were met with a younger woman, Margaret's daughter, who looked at them with a soft expression the moment they mentioned her mother's name. "You were here that night, weren't you?" the daughter asked, already knowing the answer. And they nodded, Jack and Sarah and the kids, and then the daughter told them Margaret had passed away just a few months after that stormy night, peacefully, in her sleep. But before she did, she told her daughter something that had stuck with her. "One night when the storm was the worst I'd ever seen, a family showed up at my door. I let them in. I don't know if they'll ever come back, but if they do, tell them they're always welcome here." The family sat in the very same sitting room that night, next to the same fireplace, feeling something that they couldn't describe. A warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Margaret was gone, but what she had given them never left. We meet people every single day, and some we forget. But others, they leave something behind. And it's not something that you can touch. It's not something you hold, but it's something that you feel. And in this instance, even years later. And I want to ask, how often do you think that you take the time to go back and say thank you to people who change your life for the better? And maybe the better question is, who are you going to be that person for? You know, when we look back on our lives, it's not always the big moments that stick with us the most. It's not the grand gestures or the milestones or the carefully planned events. I say it's the mundane. It really is. Sometimes it's the smallest acts of kindness that are the ones that we remember the longest. Maybe it was a warm meal when we least expected it, or a stranger who made us feel like we belonged in that moment, or a moment of generosity that maybe we didn't know we even needed until after it happened, or maybe it was a little bit after it happened. The thing for me is that kindness, I don't think it has to be complicated. It doesn't have to be extravagant. It doesn't have to be anything but just offered. If today's story, that story made you think of someone, maybe somebody who showed you kindness, someone who made you feel a certain way that was so impactful to your life, I encourage you to reach out to them and let them know. It's been done for me before, where we go about our days and nights and think that maybe we don't make a difference, yet we are intentionally kind or inclusive or slow to judge or slow to anger or just gentle. And we do those things because it's the right thing to do. And then later you find out that it had this magnificent impact. And that feels so, the word I guess would be validating, really, because it's not all for naught. You do it because it's the right thing. You don't do it for a pat on the ass. You do it because it's the right thing. And the right thing always feels good, even if you don't get the thanks. But when you get the thanks, it's that reminder that the right thing always wins. And it does. Goodness, kindness, it always wins. And maybe someone doesn't even come to mind. Maybe it's just time for you, and it's your turn to be that someone for somebody else. Maybe today is the day that you say the thing or offer the hand or open the door. You never know who might be sitting in the storm, looking for a light to guide them, just an olive branch. Because if you remember, people aren't going to ask for it, even when they really need it. And these are stories that I want to keep talking about. I want to talk about them inside the Mortals, this community that we have. It's the stories that shape us, the ones that we carry, the ones that I feel remind us of who we really are. And I would love for you, and I welcome you, and I invite you to be a part of that. I'm going to link that in the description. And also those in the funeral service, if you're ready to serve differently, to show up in a way that actually matters. Maybe you need to rediscover or discover for the first time this fire and the why. That's exactly what we're going to do in Director OS. It is available to you because at the end of the day, the way that you take care of people, that's what they're going to remember. And I'll link that as well. This is episode 227. I want you to go out there and be that person. And if you already have been, I hope somebody takes the time to tell you that. This is a good one, guys. I'll see you at the next one.